Day one of BYU training camp is in the books. I was there. I had a chance to catch up with players and coaches, and I will just say this. The QB battle in Provo, it's legitimate, and it very well could go the distance.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day, and appreciate all of you who are everydayers with us here on your only and original daily BYU podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download Game Time app today, create an account, use that promo code Locked On College they've offered us, and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, let's dive right in. BYU football held their first practice at training camp, and it was a hot one. If you're watching this on YouTube, you probably can see a little bit of the sheen off of my forehead. It was 90-plus degrees, smoky and hazy out there, and it felt every bit the heat. But the nice part is football is back. I love it, and the biggest thing for BYU from day one is it's a legitimate QB battle between Jake Retzlaff and Gerry Bohanon. Now, I said in the lead up to the start of training camp earlier this week that I believe the timeline for deciding who a starting quarterback for BYU is going to be is essentially these first 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. I think at that point, the team at least will know who the QB1 is going to be. We as the media and a fan base probably won't know until game one, about a month from now. But I really think that Jake Retzlaff and Gerry Bohanon are drawing the best out of one another. I saw some really, really nice throws. Now, let's also acknowledge the fact that our media viewing portion is 10 to 20 minutes. So it's a snapshot of really what the entire practice entails. But when we were out there, I saw some really, really nice throws from both quarterbacks. I truly believe this is a legitimate battle that is going to go down to the wire. Now, we'll see who ultimately wins it. I've still kind of cast my lot with it, thinking it will be Jake Retzlaff. I've said that for months now, and I'm going to stay on that bandwagon. But I really think both of them are bringing the best out of one another. Gerry Bohanon said after practice that his shoulder is finally truly 100% healthy. He feels like he's really ready to let it rip. Jake Retzlaff expressed a lot of confidence in his experience, obviously having played 4 games in this offense last year for BYU. And you can tell that he does not like being the guy who's been saddled with, well, he's 0-4 as a starting quarterback. He does not like that. And I can completely understand why, because nobody wants to be deemed a quote unquote loser. So I look at these two, and I think that they are going to continue to duke it out day in and day out. If you wanted to ask me what I believe the QB pecking order was from day one, I would say Gerry Bohanon by a very slim margin, be like 1A to 1B, because of one thing that I observed out there. It appeared that what I perceived to be BYU's starting offensive line was working with a Gerry Bohanon in a split squad format, whereas Jake was working with a mixture of what guys that probably would be the 1 or the 2 deep type guys. Does that mean that Gerry Bohanon is the guy? No, that's only one day. But I really think that this QB battle is absolutely legitimate. It's not being put out there for a dog and pony show, and they're going to make these guys earn it. Other observations. Hinckley Ropati is back, folks. It's really good to see him out there. Now, they're only wearing helmets right now. They'll do that again today before putting on shoulder pads tomorrow, when it gets a little more legitimate once you strap on the extra pads in practice. But what I saw from Hinckley Ropati indicates to me that if LJ Martin is slowed at all, whether he is injured, whether he's not, I don't care. If he needs to come off the field, Hinckley Ropati very much looks the part as the number 2, if not the 1B to the 1A of LJ Martin. That's nothing to take away from Miles Davis or Pokai Unga, but I really think that Hinckley Ropati is back with a vengeance, and he looks like he is ready to go. He is as yoked as ever. Any of you who have seen him in person know that he is just this muscle-bound freak of nature. He's not the tallest guy in the world. I think he's listed at 5'8", but he is chock full of muscle, and he looked very, very quick in and out of his cuts. I was really intrigued with what he showed. Other things I observed, I liked what I saw from Reiner Swanson and the other tight ends. Ethan Erickson, who is a guy that BYU coaches have been hoping could really emerge at some point, is finally back healthy after a really injury-prone year a season ago. Jackson Bowers was out there, Mata Avata'ase. The tight end group, I thought, had a good day. Keanu Hill, obviously, making that transition from wide receiver. And I'll tease this ahead to tomorrow. I had a chance to catch up with Darius Lassiter, and we're going to play it on tomorrow's podcast. And he's very high on the wide receiving core. He believes that they, as I've talked about, are truly the deepest position group on BYU's roster, and for good reason. When you have your top 6 returning guys, and that's not even including Keanu Hill, who has moved to tight end now, and then you bring in a high-level talent like a Cody Hagan as well as a Dominique McKenzie, there's a lot of confidence in this wide receiving core. So I very much like what I saw. That's very bad grammar there and not correct English, but I really appreciated what I saw from BYU on day one. It is one day of 20 some odd practices to go. We'll be out there twice a week for the first 3 weeks of training camp here. So we'll be sure to bring it the latest as we get it. And if you want, by the way, up to the minute details, make sure to join our Locked On Cougars Insider group. I talk about it often on this podcast. Anybody who was a member of it got my notes from what I got shortly after practice wrapped up yesterday evening. So if you want to be in the know as quickly as possible, Locked On Cougars Insider is where you need to go, or you can just wait and check out the next podcast. There are some tidbits in there that I may not even get to on today's show. So just another plug for it. Join us today. It's in the link in the show notes below. All right. One other note I wanted to pass along is that I think that the defensive line for BYU, it's got some people out there believing that they can really step forward. Now, I am still worried about the depth, particularly at defensive tackle. This was a defensive line. Remember, BYU was the worst Power 5 pass rush team in the entire country. They're bottom 5 in the entirety of FBS football a year ago in terms of their sacks and havoc rates and all these different measurables with regards to defensive line play. I talked to 2 different individuals. I call them our practice insiders, people that are feeding me intel. And they both said that they think that this defensive line can turn some heads. Well, really, with as bad as they were a year ago, anything would be turning head type improvement. But I look at it and I think that Tyler Batty, Isaiah Banyal, particularly at defensive end, they've got a lot to prove. I look at the defensive tackle unit. You've got John Nelson there. You got Luke To'omalatai, who's just coming into BYU. You also look at the likes of David Latu. They got a lot to prove there, and we'll see if it ultimately is something that can become a strength for BYU, but it's worth monitoring. And then in the defensive secondary, interesting to see that Jacob Robinson and Maury Bamba were your day one starting cornerback tandem out there in the defensive secondary. A lot of us expected to be Mark Collins. Collins was at practice, but it looked like he was running more with the 2s when he was in drills from our observation window, but it's a positive sign to see Maury Bamba making a leap up the depth chart if that is truly what it's going to shake out to be. We all expected Jacob Robinson to be the lead guy for BYU at cornerback, but Maury's got all the size. He's all at 6'3". He's all at 200 pounds. He's very fleet-footed, and if he can put it together and get on the field finally in large doses, that'd be a very positive sign for BYU. And then the nickel spot, which is kind of that slot corner that Eddie Heckard played so well last year, it's good to see Micah Harper back on the field wearing a knee brace, obviously coming off a knee injury a year ago, but you can tell he is excited to play. He was showing a lot of passion out there, and I really liked what I saw from him at that nickel spot. He'll obviously factor in at safety as well. So there you go. That's kind of the sights and sounds what I took away from day one. One of 20 some odd practices. So more observation tomorrow on a Friday. So we'll have a report for you guys. I may do a miniature report on a Saturday or something for you guys. If not, we'll have a full report on Monday. But it's go time. We are back, and it is full go for BYU football as they hit training camp, and they already are hitting, by the way, even without pads. There was quite a bit of guys getting after one another. So that's another thing to pay attention to. All right. There is one position group, obviously, with some news yesterday of Ben Bywater officially making it official that he is hanging it up for his at least collegiate career. What is the BYU linebacker position to do? We'll delve into that more fully momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys no matter what you're into, whatever event you like to go to. If you want to go to sporting events, music, theater, man, whatever you got hankering for, they got options for you guys. But this time of year, a lot of us like get out to the ballpark. There's nothing better than a summer night at an MLB ballpark. And the good news is Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting your tickets faster and easier if you're going out to the ballpark this summer, wherever it might be. The best part is prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of getting your MLB tickets and get you out to the ballpark where you can enjoy that dog and watch the game yourself. The best part is they have last-minute tickets, flash deals, and zone deals. Every type of option available to you guys. Easy to find and buy your MLB tickets, and for every other kind of event in your area as well if you're interested in other things. And you can see views from all the seats inside the app. At 2 taps, you bought them and you're done. So take the guesswork out of buying your MLB tickets today with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Are you sick of watching Fox Sports, ESPN on your TV all day long and having to turn down the volume because of all the shouting going on? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel, bringing you every day the biggest stories without all the screaming going on those other networks. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and of course, it is your team every day. All right. Ben Bywater formally announced that his collegiate playing days are done. Disappointing news. Speaking on a personal note, I've gotten to know Ben fairly well because he made weekly appearances during the last 2 football seasons with DJ and PK on the KSL Sports Zone, the station I work for in my day job. And Ben is just an incredible human being, point blank, end of story. In addition to that, he's an incredible football player. He was the 7th, the 7th highest in terms of active tackles in his career with 240 plus entering the season. But that shoulder injury he suffered against Kansas last year, I was there in Lawrence when he went off the field and didn't look good then. And according to him, it's frankly not gotten much better since that time. He has seen multiple specialists. He said he went to the Mayo Clinic out there in Minnesota, I believe. It's a famed medical clinic, as many of you might know. He has seen multiple specialists in Southern California and all over the country. He underwent multiple surgeries to try and get back on the field this season. He said that the doctors were not going to clear him. So as a result of his nerve damage in that shoulder, he says he's no better than 50% back right now. He expressed confidence that he will get back to full health at some point, but with nerve injuries, if any of you have suffered them and if you've paid attention to the sports world, it happens in the NFL often. It can take quite literally months, if not years, for guys to get full function back due to those nerves. You never quite know when it's going to come back to full capacity, if it does. That's the other thing about this. And as such, Ben has announced that he is stepping away from his playing days at BYU. And let's acknowledge it for what it is. It is a huge, massive blow for the BYU football program to have Ben sitting out. Now, he can obviously impart as much of his knowledge as he can to guys like Siale Esera, Ace Kaufusi, and the other linebackers that Harrison Taggart, who I figure will probably step into that role. He fills that middle linebacker, the Mike backer, as they like to call it in the BYU defense. But I don't know how you go about replacing him like for like. Ben was the heart and soul of this defense. Even when BYU's defense, those final couple of seasons under Elisa Tuiaki as well as Ed Lamb, that BYU's defense was Swiss cheese, Ben was just a rock in those defenses. The same thing last year before being lost for the season with that shoulder injury, and I wish him truly nothing but the best. He and Kalani Sitake did leave the door open for him if that shoulder injury recovers in due time to maybe pursue professional football, but you will not see number 2 out there for BYU on defense. And it's a crippling blow in many respects for BYU's defense. What are the linebackers going to what are the linebackers going to do for BYU? Well, all they can do is pick up and carry on. It was good to see Siale Esera out there practicing on day one for BYU. Remember, he had a season-ending foot injury late last season, and the question mark was coming into training camp, would he be ready to go? It was good to see him out there on day one. Harrison Taggart looks like he's bulked up quite a bit. He talked with a number of reporters during media availability. I also think that Ace Kaufusi is a guy that we're not talking enough about. He has really come on strong. He's got the length, the size, and athleticism to really be an impact player if he gets the requisite time at linebacker. But you're going to have to essentially get a combination of guys to be the answer for BYU at linebacker without Ben Bywater in that lineup. The good news is Jack Kelly has come in, and from day one observation, he looks the part. He's athletic. He's fluid. He's got a great change of pace ability, obviously able to go sideline to sideline. And so long as that continues to translate over to the Power 4 level here in the Big 12 for BYU, Jack Kelly is going to be a key cog for this defense. Isaiah Glasker was also out there. The starting unit for linebackers, from my observation, appeared to be Jack Kelly. It was a combination of Siale Esera and or Ace Kaufusi, and then you also had Isaiah Glasker. And Glasker was a standout in training camp a year ago before suffering a season-ending injury of his own. So with, knock on wood, health pending for BYU, because you already have one linebacker done, and it's Ben Bywater. But if they stay healthy, there's some depth there at linebacker for BYU, and it's that depth's got to shine through. You've got to be able to get more production from this linebacker unit. When Ben Bywater went down last year, BYU's defense tanked hard, and you don't want to chalk it up to just one guy, but when I say that Ben was the heart and soul of the BYU defense, I'm not speaking out of turn at all, because multiple people inside that program have said a very similar sentiment, if not those exact words to me, about what he meant to the BYU defense. So you've got to get more production from the other guys. And in the afterglow of adversity, the opportunity presents itself. And that's what every one of these other linebackers on BYU's roster have to realize now. Even if it's a guy like we're talking about, I mentioned Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly and Siale Esera and Harrison Taggart. But even if you're Maika Kaufusi, if you're Miles Hall, who is really bulked up and looks very much the part of a college linebacker, every one of those guys has to be sitting there thinking now, this is my time to step into the fray. But remember, when Ben stepped in and really became what he was for BYU, it's when other linebackers had to step away from the field due to graduation or injury, and Ben stepped into that and really became what he was. It's a major blow to have him exiting this lineup and doing it as training camp gets underway, but he battled for months. Literally, I'm privy to a little bit more information that I'm not going to share because I've been asked to kind of be careful with it. But I know that Ben has worked night and day to get himself back to playing football, but it just never was able to get to where he needed it to be. And the doctors at BYU have essentially told him that they would not clear him to play. And it sucks. It really does suck to see a guy like that have the sport he loves taken away from him in the circumstance. But the good news is each of these linebackers that still remain at BYU can soak up his knowledge, obviously, by sitting with him in film study and the like, but at the same time, they can also benefit by the extra playing time, the extra reps that will be available to them now. You got to have Siale Esera step to the forefront. This is a young man from Timpview High School that the second he stepped on campus at BYU, he very much looked the part. There was some news yesterday that Sefo Akila, as well as his former teammate, the name's escaping me. I've got to pull it up here. I apologize. Sefo Akila, as well as Naki Tuakoi, those two were not on the roster at the start of training camp yesterday. And Kalani Sitake said there's a chance they may still be able to enroll in time for this upcoming season. And having them at linebacker, because both of them are very highly accomplished high school players, will be a nice addition to bolster the depth of the linebacker unit. But not counting them right now, I still think that you have a great opportunity for these linebackers to say, hey, we got this. We'll hold it down until we figure out exactly who the standout player or players are going to be. The depth is going to be the most critical part of this for the Cougars. And once again, knocking on wood that they do have that health this year, because they took a bunch of hits at the linebacker position injury-wise a season ago, and it really affected the overall output of this defense. If they can stay healthy, I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that the sum total of the parts of this linebacking core can become more than what Ben Bywater and friends were for BYU, because that was pretty dang good. Ben doing what he did, when you rack up 250 total tackles in essentially 2.5 seasons, you're doing something pretty special. But the chance now, or it's not a chance, the opportunity now exists for BYU's other linebackers to say, okay, Ben, you put on for us for years now. Now we're going to put on for you, and we're going to go out there and get after it. And I hope that they do, because if they can live up to what they're expected to be and what they have to be for BYU to have success this year, it'd be a positive step as Jay Hill continues to retool this defense. So, disappointing news for Ben Bywater, and I wish him truly nothing but the best. I'm going to work some strings. Like I say, he's become a pretty good friend. I'm going to see if I can get him on the podcast to talk about this. We'll get his thoughts on the linebacking core, because he's in that meeting room. So we'll see what we can do. We'll see if we can work it to get him on the show, and I think I might be able to persuade him. I just don't quote me on that. We'll see what we can do. All right. We'll finish up today's show with some news that came earlier in the week, but due to some of the schedule I had with the podcast, have not had a chance to talk about a new commitment for the BYU football program. It's on the offensive side of the football. Who is Kingston Keana'aina? We're talking about him next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, and of course, you're not burning cash at the same time. With all the parts that you need, the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a great way to get one-on-one interaction with myself, get inside tidbits of what I'm hearing about BYU sports, football, and basketball in particular. But if you'd like to join us, click the link in the show notes, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it wherever you get it, and join us today. 14-day free trial, $5 a month afterwards to get access to that. And the best part is the updates come to you in the form of a text message. Does not get much more simple than that. It comes right to your mobile device. So join us today. All right, let's finish up today's show. Let's talk about a new commitment for the BYU football program, the 16th commitment, by the way, of the 2025 recruiting cycle, and that is Kingston Keana'aina. And I'm hopefully pronouncing that correctly. He's got a really, really cool last name, because Keana'aina, I really like that. But more importantly, he's got the game to fit BYU's defense, BYU's offense. He comes to BYU by way of Mountain View, California, and St. Francis High School. If I recall correctly, and this just shows my BYU nerddom out there, I want to say St. Francis was the same school. If you remember Camel Green, who played defensive back for BYU, he was one of the two transfers from Washington State back in the day that brought Squally Canada to BYU. Camel Green has gone on to do a lot of stuff in the entrepreneurial circuit, but I believe he was a St. Francis High School alum, and cool to see Kingston deciding to sign with BYU. Now, he is the second running back commitment in this recruiting cycle for BYU alongside Las Vegas product, Kale Breslin. And both of these guys, speaking of Breslin, and more importantly, Kingston, Keana'aina, is that both of them bring a really distinct style I think BYU is targeting in their running backs. And what is that style, Jake? Good thing you asked. It is more in the mold of what you saw from Tyler Algier back in the day. Remember, Tyler, he may not be the top-end, fleet-footed sprinter type running back, but what he is is super effective with his one cut in the outside zone scheme that BYU likes to run, made his reads very, very quickly, and then exploited it for huge gains. Yes, if you gave him a huge hole, he was going to exploit it, and he had enough speed to really show off in a big way. And that's what I see from Kingston Keana'aina is he is in a mold like Tyler Algier, like Jamal Williams, even Squally Canada for the BYU offense, where yes, they may not be the top end running backs who run a 4.3 40, but they maybe run a 4.5, and they got plenty of size. They list Kingston here on 24/7 Sports at 5'11", 200 pounds. I've seen him listed as high as 210 pounds. And I think watching his film, from what I can observe, you're going to see him play maybe at BYU at like 220 pounds. And that's, if he's 5'11", 220, that's exactly what Tyler Algier was for BYU when he was doing his thing for the Cougars. I like this pickup because Kingston is a guy that I think understands who he is as a player. Because if you watch his highlight reel, you can go on Huddle. I mean, by the way, I'm going to start implementing some more of this. I found out actually I can use Huddle highlights without like getting hit with YouTube, like you've stolen video footage. So I'm going to start utilizing that a little bit more. I had to get this podcast out before I got to bed tonight. So I'll probably revisit this and talk more about Kingston when I get a chance to link that in. But what I see from Kingston on his highlight reel is this is a young man who understands who he is as a football player. And that is a big thing for a lot of guys out there, is to realize what your strengths are as a player and to exploit them and make them your key strengths. There's a lot of people out there who like to think they can do everything on the football field. And maybe there are guys who can do that. But in the case of Kingston Keana'aina, I think he understands that he's a bigger bodied running back who may not have the quote unquote home run speed, but he's got plenty to really take it to the house, especially at the high school level. You watch his high school highlights, he is shedding tackles and showing off. And the good news is there are other Power 4 programs who are chasing him, most notably Arizona was in with an offer to Kingston, according to 24/7 Sports. He's not the most highly rated player. He's rated an 84, so it's kind of mid-tier 3-star status from 24/7 Sports. The composite rating is just a little bit south of that, 83.67. He's the 113th running back nationally, according to 24/7 Sports. But let's remind you guys, Tyler Algier, he was a 2-star preferred walk-on coming to BYU, who, by the way, played his first snaps at BYU at linebacker. So you can come from anywhere, seemingly, and have success. But I look at what Kingston brings to BYU, at least on tape, and he is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I do not know if he necessarily has mission plans at this point. So if I learn about that, that could change things, because he could enroll as soon as next year, or if he goes on a mission, that's 2 or 3 years out. So that's obviously a conversation to be had. But whenever he shows up at BYU, I think that Harvey Unga is recruiting to a type of running back. And Kel Breslin, I talked about this when we talked about his commitment, and I think it's very much the same thing with Kingston Keana'aina here, is that both of them are bigger-bodied running backs who understand the outside zone running scheme, are very good with their reads, are one-cut running backs, and that's exactly what BYU needs. You can't have running backs who dance in the backfield in this offense for the Cougars. This is a retooled offensive line who has been schooled in what they need to do. They've got to get off their blocks and open holes. And the job of the running back in this offense with that one-cut scheme that they have with the outside zone is they've got to be able to read that and read it in real time. You can't afford to be bouncing around in the backfield, because if you do that, the simple fact of the matter is you're going to be tackled for a loss more often than you're going to pick up yardage. So I appreciate that Kingston Keana'aina understands his style as a running back, but more importantly, I think that Aaron Roderick, Harvey Unga, and even Kalani Sitake understand what kind of running backs are going to succeed in Provo, and they're recruiting to that. Yes, if they had a 5-star guy, like, let's say the Reggie Bushes of the world, who said, BYU want to come play for you, yeah, you take that in a heartbeat. But until that happens, if it ever does happen, guess what you do? You go and find the type of running backs that you've had proven success with, you build your offense around them, and you have success along the way. That is understanding who you are. You're a developmental program, speaking of BYU. You bring guys in and you coach them up, and they get the seasoning they need. And then when they hit the field, they're more than capable of contributing to winning football. You can do a lot worse than just kind of understanding who you are as a football program, and more importantly, within that program, speaking of BYU, understanding the style of player or the archetype of players that work within your system. And I look at what BYU is doing with the running backs right now on the recruiting front, and I think that Harvey Unga understands what he wants in his running backs, and he's trying to find them no matter where they might be. In this case, one's coming from Northern California. The other in Kel Breslin is coming from the Las Vegas area. If he could find a guy in Maine, of all places, I'm sure Harvey Unga would go and get that guy if he believed it would fit into what he is trying to accomplish as BYU's running backs coach. But congratulations to Kingston. It's a really cool thing to see him getting his opportunity to play at the Power 4 level with Brigham Young University. And I really look at his highlight reel and I see something that I think is going to be something BYU can build around. They know what they need to have success with. I think Kingston Keana'aina fits that to a T. And fingers crossed, if he is anywhere near the level of a guy like Tyler Algier, you got another just gem, really, if you can get that type of a player out of a Kingston Keana'aina. And I wish him nothing but the best as he moves forward with his commitment to the BYU football program. So there you go. That is what I've got for you guys on this Thursday edition of the podcast. Crazy, crazy stuff, but it's fun. I'm having a blast. It was so good to be back out of football practice. I'm still sweating. I literally sat down as soon as I got home from BYU to record this podcast. So if I look a little disheveled, if you're watching this on YouTube, my apologies. But at the same time, it is go time. It is a really, really fun time of year. I look forward to college football season more than many holidays out there on the calendar. And July 31st, 2024, day one of BYU football training camp, felt like it was Christmas in July. We're now into August, so fun month ahead, obviously leading up to BYU kicking off the season at the end of this month. Think about this, folks. It's August. BYU plays football this month. So get ready for it, and we'll have plenty of coverage for you guys right here on the podcast as well. So once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and thank you to all of you who we like to call everydayers as well. And until tomorrow, this has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.